Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your evangelist of the imagination, and your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, the show about something. Robservations, episode 690. So as many of you know, I am a longtime lover, supporter, and advocate of the Fast and the Furious franchise. Rob Cohen's original was sort of an updating of a B-movie, and it was a shameless, almost pseudo-remake of Catherine Bigelow's Point Break, which I didn't mind, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was. I enjoyed its multi-ethnic cruise, showing that side of L.A., I mean, that youthful, zesty side of L.A. When you go out at night in Los Angeles, you go to a club, you see all kinds of beautiful people from all over the place. I like the different subcultures in L.A. It's something that always attracted me to the city when I first moved here when I was 21 years old. I moved here right after my 21st birthday, literally 2 weeks after. And I've always loved L.A., and I love that about the Fast and Furious franchise. I really did. And the first movie, undercover cop story, Paul Walker goes undercover, into Vin Diesel's crew, and they're basically stealing DVD players. And what I liked about the film was the action in it, fast cars, trying to steal things from trucks, jacking trucks and all that. I really liked it. And one of the great appeals, I think, to any car chase, I mean, ask yourself as an audience member, why are car chases exciting? Why? Why is it fun to watch car chases? Well, it's fun to watch car chases because we've all ridden in cars. We know what it's like to be careening down the freeway at fast speeds, or maybe sometimes you've done naughty things and driven fast when you shouldn't have, but we all know what that's like. Now, watching car chases, say, in the middle of a city, because we've all been in cars, we understand how fraught with peril something like that is. Or if you're on a freeway trying to go from one car to a semi-truck traveling at speed, it can be terrifying. That's why action scenes work. Action scenes in movies work because we, as audience members, we understand what it's like or what it would be like to be the protagonists in those films. And one of the things that I've always loved about action sequences is if the action is really well staged. And one of the things that is required of an action sequence is you need geography. If you have, say, a car chase, you constantly have to reestablish the geography of where, in fact, you are in relation to the car that's chasing you or the situation you're in, which is why you need what are called master shots. Master shots are big and wide, and that's the same. The same is true of fight scenes. And one of the things that I learned about action sequences, and I learned this actually when I was covering Lord of the Rings. I did the editorial. I was in New Zealand. Obviously, I worked on the Lord of the Rings documentaries, and I did the piece on editorial on the Two Towers, and specifically the Battle of Helm's Deep. And when they first cut that battle, it was like 40 minutes long, and they thought, as it was told to me by the editor, well, this is a tasty battle, isn't it? And they thought they'd cut this amazing action scene. And looking at the battle that was 40 minutes long, it didn't work. It got boring. And it was not thrilling to watch. And they realized, well, why is that? Why does this great battle of all these scenes get boring? Well, because like anything, if you're not invested in an action scene, you can't. You're not going to feel it. An action scene is supposed to make you feel exhilarated, like you're like, you want to take in your breath in a great action scene. And unfortunately, in the Battle of Helm's Deep, the way they had originally cut it, you just got bored. The reason was you weren't invested in the battle. And the reason you weren't invested in the battle at first is because you didn't know a lot of the time what our main characters were doing. They would cut away and show men and orcs battling. The problem is, we're not there just to watch men and orcs. We're there to watch our characters. We want to see Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn. How are they faring in the battle? So the battle always has to be from their perspective. We keep switching. What they did was they weave them into the battle, so we always knew what was going on with them because that's who we're following. And when you get into just a battle scene, if you just have action, well, it becomes rather pornographic, meaning without feeling. And you end up watching the mechanics of this, and yet you're not invested in it. And a great action sequence has to be designed like anything else. It has to have a beginning. It has to have a middle. It has to have an end. It has to have peaks. It has to have valleys. But most importantly, that you as an audience member need to understand where you are or where our protagonist is at any time in a battle or an action scene. You have to know, and we have to understand. And I think one of the great pitfalls of modern storytelling is the action scenes are sometimes pre-designed before the film is even there, before even the director sometimes is brought on. And now with all the technology, you can come up with all of this great action. You can stage all this great action. You don't even need to have the cast if you're doing a car chase in it at all, because you're going to go shoot them inside the car later when the action scenes cut together. Then you can say, okay, we need these inserts, and we'll go get those inserts, and we'll shoot them. But as a result, more than ever before, you can watch big action scenes, and I think this is true. There's been a lot of... I remember seeing Transformers for the first time, and I liked the first Transformers. I did. But there's a battle at the end that is borderline incoherent. You know, people are fighting. You have no idea what's going on. From one, you don't know where people are. You're seeing explosions. And what a lot of modern filmmaking does is trick you into thinking that you're seeing a great action scene when in point of fact is what you're responding to are the actual picture cuts themselves. You can create the feeling of action that isn't really there by cutting quickly. So then you're constantly being jerked out of things visually by the movies that you watch. Now, the Fast and the Furious franchise is, I think, a textbook case in seeing how action cinema has evolved over the last, now, 21 years? The franchise is now 20 years old. And you've seen how the modern action sequence in films has begun to let us down. And for the record, I saw Fast 9 last night. And I'm not going to review the film. I did say specifically that I felt that the series jumped a shark. I tweeted this out. It jumped the shark, and the chasm it jumped over was as wide as the Grand Canyon, and this definitely felt like season 8 of Game of Thrones. And to say that I was extremely disappointed in it would be a massive understatement. And a lot of it had to do with the untethering, and this has been going on with the franchise. My favorite Fast and the Furious movie is Fast 5. And I think Fast 5 is the pinnacle of the franchise. I love all the character work. I mean, it's the characters, the family is there. It's never been better. But there are action sequences in Fast 5 that are spectacular. For instance, they steal cars out of a train. And that action sequence, you understand from the very beginning of that sequence, okay, what is our objective? What do we need to do? And you methodically get to watch them, Dom and Vin Diesel and Paul Walker, go about achieving this goal. And this is, I think, really important when it comes to action cinema. And Fast 5... while at the end of the movie, there's a huge car chase where they steal a vault and they pull it through the streets of a city down in South America. I don't necessarily think the two cars could pull a vault that is that heavy. I don't think they could, but I'm willing to go with it. That one ask. I've always said movies get one big ask of you. Well, that's the big ask. Is you believe that these two cars in tandem could be carrying this vault. Loved it. I loved it. I mean, I found the action believable. As outlandish as it got, it was still cars careening through city streets. Beautifully photographed. The action scenes were well staged. You understood exactly what was at stake. And what was interesting is they had this visual device of them pulling along this vault that really helped out. So you always knew what was at stake and what was happening at any one time. I thought Fast Five was a brilliant piece of action filmmaking. Really, it's a gussied up B movie in A-list clothing, which is fine. That's the way it should be. And even my beloved Tokyo Drift that not a lot of people love, it was exhilarating watching cars drifting through a circular parking garage. And why it was exciting? Because one, those are very tight quarters, and you'd have to be a precise driver to be able to pull off drifts like that, so you know how amazing it is. And we know what it's like to drive in those kinds of parking structures. So it becomes something that we can marvel at. Because if we are on, say, an alien planet and you're watching something you've never seen before, it's harder to grapple with. It's harder to find interest for yourself in it. But the Fast and the Furious franchise, even Too Fast, Too Furious, and I know a lot of people, it's not their favorite movie, but they all have great, let's call them real-world stunts. Well, unfortunately, that was not the case. And I know people are going to laugh. Well, Rob, you know, the series has been spinning off into oblivion since Fast 6. The runway at the end of Fast 6 lasts such a long time. It's like, come on, is the plane going to take off? Fast 7, you've got physics problems like one car in Dubai jumping out of one building and into another. Something like that probably is impossible. And if it was possible, they'd probably both be killed. And then, of course, Fast 8, outrunning torpedoes on the ice, nuclear submarines. So the Fast franchise, I think, hit its zenith with Fast 5 and Fast 6, 7, 8. While you're giving the world bigger and bigger thrills, it's going to play well in China. I think that the entire franchise has been slowly undermined by its complete untethering to any kind of reality. Because I think the best action scenes are action scenes that we, the audience, understand exactly what's happening. And if you start to play fast and loose with the laws of physics, then it ceases to be interesting. Because if you know that all of this outlandishness can occur and our characters are not going to get hurt, there are no consequences. So any excitement generated by an action scene goes away. And I thought that was, in the case of Fast 9, that was something that began very early on in the movie, and I was uncoupled from my love of the franchise. And I didn't want to be. I was up to see this movie. I've always loved the Fast and the Furious movies. I've never been in a Fast and the Furious movie where I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch it. I couldn't wait for it to be over because there was nothing more for me. There was no enjoyment in terms of the action scenes. And that's been happening a lot. It's been happening a lot. I mean, maybe not so much in the last year, but I found a couple of articles. I was like, I can't be the only person that finds the problem with modern action scenes. Like, if people would ask me, okay, Rob, what's a good action scene? What do you think is a good action scene? Well, I'll tell you, there's a couple that come to mind, and they're from the 80s. One is in the original RoboCop, when RoboCop assaults a cocaine factory. And basically, RoboCop comes in, and there's a lot of master shots where you see big wide angles of from far up the bleachers where RoboCop is running, and you have these wide shots where you see him shoot, he moves, he shoots again, so there's scope. And then you cut to, say, a villain shooting at him, and you cut to RoboCop a close-up, but you constantly are coming back to wider shots, and it's really showing you, wow, this place is really getting shot up because we understand the environment that RoboCop is in. And the whole thing makes us, as viewers, our pulse rates go up. Another action sequence that I always point to as being an amazing action sequence is the truck chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones takes off to get that ark out of the truck that the Nazis have it in. And, of course, we all remember the scene on horseback. Indiana Jones gets up to the truck, gets on the truck, gets thrown off the truck. He's being hanging off the back of the truck with his bullwhip. Then he has to get back on the truck, and then he gets up to the cab. After fighting Nazis in the back of the truck, he gets up to the cab. He fights the driver, and he gets thrown out. That's when he gets thrown out and hooks his that's when he hooks his bullwhip up and hangs off the back of the truck and has to play it all over again. But the genius of that sequence is the truck never stops moving. It might go into the trees, but it's a moving thing. So immediately you as an audience member are like, oh my God, that truck is not stopping. What are you going to do? And what Spielberg does so brilliantly is he keeps setting new objectives in that sequence. And during the sequence, Indiana Jones fulfills one objective. I get onto the truck. Or I get back on the truck in the case of the bullwhip. And then he has to fight his way through. And then the next obstacle is surmounted and then surmounted and then surmounted until he finally is able to throw the driver out of the front of the truck and do what the driver had done to him moments before, but the driver doesn't have a bullwhip, so he gets run over. And these are great action sequences. And there's a lot of great, like I think about some of my favorite action scenes in movies. There's the ambush sequence in Clear and Present Danger. Why does that work? Because you're in an urban area, you're between buildings, and you're trapped in this area, and there are gunmen all above you fighting, trying to kill you. Now, the reason that action sequence works so well is not just because it's beautifully directed, but also because we as the audience can see ourselves, what would I do if I was in that situation? And I think the great thing about movies, I was just talking about this on another stream, when you're in that situation, because we know the physics of the real world, we know how dangerous things really can be. And I think the great action sequences of all time make you believe, and you yourself are putting yourself into that. You're constantly thinking, well, what would I do in this situation? How would I handle this situation? Would I survive in this situation? Well, there's a couple articles I found that I thought I would share. And one is by Chris O'Fate, and this was published in 2017, and it was in IndieWire, and I thought it was definitely worth sharing. Why action scenes in big-budget movies have become so boring. When Brett Ratner, how times have changed, when Brett Ratner recently went after Rotten Tomatoes, he said that the art of film criticism had disappeared and that low tomato meter scores, are keeping middle America from seeing blockbusters like Batman v Superman. There's an idea at the root of Ratner's argument that we keep seeing. When film publications, critics, and cinephiles take digs at modern Hollywood action filmmaking, it is seen in highbrow versus lowbrow terms. The truth is, serious movie lovers still love a well-crafted and well-choreographed action scene. And recent examples such as Logan, Fury Road, by the way, perhaps the GOAT when it comes to car chases, Pete's Dragon, and Baby Driver have not gone unappreciated. But here's the harsh truth. Most Hollywood franchises aren't just bad, their action scenes are boring. We live in an age where the photorealistic advances in computer-generated effects and lighting design, motion capture, green screen, stunt coordination, and military-like devices that move the camera are rapid and mind-blowing. The technology being used today on a film that will hit theaters in the summer of 2018 is far more advanced than what we saw in theaters last summer. I will never forget going to a private screening of a great mid-90s action film hosted by the director, who is still one of Hollywood's biggest names behind the camera. After the screening, the director confessed that the film felt dated to him. Everything felt slower, less explosive, and he couldn't help comparing it to how he filmed the action scenes in more recent efforts. I remember thinking how ironic that was because for most of us, that mid-90s film represented his best work. In the history of Hollywood and technological advance is fairly simple. The history of Hollywood and technological advances is fairly simple. When color, sound, widescreen, 3D, and visual effects were first introduced, studios focused on projects that showcased the newest big screen attraction. Rather quickly, the spectacle wears off, and those technological advances simply become another tool that becomes fully integrated into the storytelling. That trajectory is certainly what was happening in the 90s and early aughts with VFX and action sci-fi filmmaking. And then there was a shift. Hollywood is now making fewer films and spending far more money on action franchises. In part, what Hollywood is selling to the international market is a bigger spectacle that will outdo last year's model. The irony is that heavy hitters like Marvel have moved away from relying on great action directors to deliver this spectacle. They're increasingly pulling from the TV arena or from a pool of directors whose key strength is character development. These directors' jobs is to help massage the story and character arcs, which are simply chapters in an enormous tome that will be unraveling into the next decade. These directors are not experienced in action, but that's no accident. The studio relies on a handful of the very best stunt coordinators and VFX specialists to deliver bigger and better action. This is in part made possible through pre-visualization software, where every millisecond, every effect, every movement, every angle, and every cut is predetermined into what looks like a computer game version of the final film that's made before the first day of production. And here's a dirty little secret. The director isn't really needed. As action set pieces are filmed in multiple locations, a great deal of it is filmed using highly skilled second unit crews without the director and the cast. Pre-visualization software isn't the problem. In fact, this storyboarding on steroids approach is ideal for keeping all departments on the same page, leading to greater efficiency and financial savings. The problem is they're not used to deliver a director's vision. Instead, they guarantee that the action is bigger and better on budget and on time. But as Brian De Palma has pointed out, when everything is pre-visualized, you end up with cliché. While that stuff looks amazing in a trailer, there's a reason most trailers only last a minute or two. The action itself is an assault on the viewer's senses. Spatial orientation has become a rarity, and pacing only comes in the form of cutaways to exposition that remind the viewer of the context and plot. Basically, that there are living, breathing humans somewhere in this mechanical ballet. It doesn't have to be this way. As the rapturous response to Wright's Baby Driver at its South by Southwest premiere proved, action scenes, when done right, are like well-choreographed musical numbers. They are the culmination of dramatic tension, the elevation from reality into mayhem that's tied to the goals and emotions of the characters. When critics call for action to be grounded, it's usually not a demand for realism, but rather a prioritizing of something that until recently was the basis of all Hollywood filmmaking: subjectivity or strong point of view. We're on the edge of our seats because the stakes are so high. That type of action scene in the hands of a skilled action director is one of the simplest, purest forms of cinema. It applies a range of visceral filmmaking techniques to put the viewer in the driver's seat with the protagonist. It's about the biggest thrills, not the biggest explosions. Ironically, the greatest battle scene in the last 2 years was not on the big screen with superheroes, but on HBO with director Miguel Sapochnik's Battle of the Bastards episode of Game of Thrones. The action and effects were big, but that's not what made it work so well. The underlying tension of the scene was Jon Snow not heeding his sister Sansa's insight into her sadistic former captor Ramsay Bolton. The battle scene became a filmmaking masterclass in the use of space, as Sapochnik expertly lured Snow and the audience into a sense of victory, only to become enclosed by Ramsay's trap. Just as space disappears and we lose our grounding in a speedily edited slaughter, Sansa shows up with reinforcements to open the trap. It's an epic triumph. She has conquered her past and is now seen as a leader to be taken seriously. The action, the pace, the story, and the direction are all of one unified force. Our involvement is not based on the effects and the size of the scene, which are impressive for television, but by doing what Hollywood has always done best: storytelling through physical action. There are a number of smart people, including those at Marvel, the Hollywood studios, and a filmmaker turned international film financier like Brett Ratner himself, who understand the realities of the ever-changing international market, which is now driving a huge and growing piece of the film industry's bottom line. Ratner's right when he says that people don't realize what goes into making a movie like Batman v Superman which got panned by critics, was a disappointment in the domestic box office, but made $900 million worldwide. There are reasons for a movie like this to exist that have nothing to do with quality. But we do know what bad filmmaking looks like. And when great action filmmakers take charge, audiences, critics on Rotten Tomatoes among them, are sure to take note. I agree with so many points in this article, and also having just watched The Battle of the Bastards in my rewatch of Game of Thrones, I couldn't agree more. It's got some amazing work in it, and there's long takes in The Battle of the Bastards. There's one very long take, and all the choreography. There's a lot of visual effects involved in this one take, but because you're following Jon Snow and you don't want anything to happen to him, the action is even more breathless. And I really felt for a series like the Fast and the Furious franchise that began very simply, simple thrills, car chases, that's all you really needed. And even Fast 5 was getting outlandish. But by the time we get to Fast 6, 7, 8, and now 9, the films become completely untethered from any sense of physical reality. And I, for one, found that very disheartening. Because up through Fast 5, I felt, and to a certain extent, Fast 6 and 7, but Fast 8 and now Fast 9 lost me completely. And the enjoyment that I normally get from these action sequences, when the action sequences are incoherent and you're not sure where you are, where you're going, why you're going there, what's happening, and then things happen in those action sequences that are entirely unbelievable, and you know for a fact that this would never happen in the real world. The whole point, the whole fun of the Fast and Furious franchise was that it did happen in the real world. You know, you could tell you're watching these cars. I mean, we know from the trailers there's electromagnetic magnets that are being used to attract cars, and yet the cars that are carrying these electromagnetic magnets are apparently impervious to the magnets themselves, and it makes no sense. And I think it was baffling to me to see Justin Lin come back for his 5th movie, and while in theory there's all this incredible action, but I don't think any of it hung together, because the idea of master shots and setting scenes up and giving a great car chase has a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like drama. So within the movie itself, every action sequence has to have that kind of drama in order to work. And if it doesn't, it isn't going to work, unfortunately. And I think that's something that needs to be considered. Now, there's another action article that I wanted to read that I found. This is actually from The Guardian, and this was written on November 2008, believe it or not. That's right, The Guardian in 2008. I found this article. It's by Annie Bilson, and 2008. See what you can find on the internet. This is a 13-year-old article. Herky-jerky cross-cutting has reduced many an action sequence to an incomprehensible mess. So why do it? Asks Annie Bilson. Let me do it later. No one knows how to film action anymore. The Dark Knight had its good points, but great action sequences were not among them. When I saw it, the sound conked out during a chase scene, leaving nothing to distract me from herky-jerky cross-cutting that had no apparent purpose other than to disguise the fact that no one, not even the filmmakers, knew what was going on. During the boat chase in Quantum of Solace, I got a headache trying to work out from the blitz of unconnected images which boat was supposed to be where. I agree with both of those things. Because listen, when you edit in an action sequence, the actual image causes your brain, it's like a jarring, it's fake action. You think it's action, but it's fake. And of course, with movement happening, you're cutting from movement going like this to movement going like this, or cars going this way and cars going this way. Sure, there's action going on, but you're not earning it through that editing. You're just causing people to go, and you're focusing them to reconfigure or figure out from cut to cut where we are at. And it's fake action. It's lazy and it's bad. And that's what she's talking about here. And I got to tell you, Quantum of Solace is some of the most egregious, big-budget filmmaking that relies on that kind of quick cutting. It wasn't shot to be that way. Paul Greengrass, on the other hand, if you look at like the Bourne Ultimatum, is that the third Bourne movie? Genius. The cross-cutting, the quick cutting in that, because there's geography. Even though the cuts are wicked fast, it was shot to be that way. You can't just cut a movie down to the bone like Quantum of Solace and make it look like or feel like a Bourne movie. You have to shoot a movie like that in the first place. And if you look at the third Bourne film, when I watched that film, I thought, man, I'm watching a new way of shooting action cinema be born right here, because you always knew where you were. The action was insane. The fights were insane. But because Paul Greengrass designed them to be shot that way, it was definitely an auteurist vision. It wasn't somebody just going, let's previs this movie. Really amazing stuff. Today's action movies get our adrenaline flowing and make our pulses beat faster, but for all the wrong reasons. We're not reacting to whatever action is taking place on screen. We're responding to deafening sound effects and hyperactive editing. They might as well rig up our seats to give us electric shocks while they're at it. It's as though filmmakers assume we're all suffering from ADD and are thus incapable of tolerating an image for more than a millisecond. Or maybe they're just caught up in a kamikaze compulsion to make each new action movie faster, noisier, and flashier, even if it's the cost of fundamental filmmaking precepts or Walter Murch's 6 main criteria for evaluating a cut, which, by the way, Walter Murch wrote a book called In the Blink of an Eye, and if you're at all interested in films or filmmaking, even if you're not an editor, I would wholeheartedly recommend you read In the Blink of an Eye. It's excellent. The gold standard of modern movie action was established over a half-century ago by Akira Kurosawa, whose Battle in the Rain at the end of The Seven Samurai managed to be simultaneously chaotic and coherent. There was never any doubt as to who was who or what they were up to. Most of my favorite action sequences are similarly examples of confusing action that doesn't leave you confused. The car chase in Mad Max 2, or as we know it, The Road Warrior. The brawls in 1941 in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Most of Die Hard. Nearly everything in Aliens. Machine gun editing in action scenes first caught on, one suspects, not so much because it quickened the pulse, but because it prevented us from noticing leading actors had been replaced by stuntmen. Look at classic 1970s kung fu films where the stars perform their own stunts. The fight sequences are shot like Fred Astaire's musical numbers with minimal camera movement, functional editing, and no trickery. They also use a lot of full body shots. They do that in my beloved The Raid, by the way, or as I like to say, The Rad, and The Rad 2 even radder. It's all in the choreography, of course, as are all the best chases and showdowns. Yen Wu Ping's fight choreography in The Matrix has stood the test of time, where the bullet time effects have dated, but nowadays, action is not so much choreographed as mocked up in the editing room. I blame it on Michael Bay, whose The Rock was cut in such a rat-a-tat style that a well-respected and non-elderly film critic later confessed to me that he hadn't a clue what was going on. Also, use of a lot of close-ups. If you watch some of the car chases in The Rock and also in, especially The Rock, not a lot of big master shots. Or when you do have master shots, they're not even on screen long enough to allow you to know where you're at. A decade on, The Rock looks almost stately next to Transformers, where the big robot showdown was an experience akin to having the contents of a scrap metal dealer's yard repeatedly flung in one's face. It's easy and fun to slag off Bay, but he's not the only one who's lost the plot. Compare the anarchic yet precisely filmed running gun battle from Michael Mann's Heat with the sloppy, confusing shootout at the end of Miami Vice 10 years later. I have nothing against rapid-fire montage and action scenes in principle, not if it's done properly. Ooh, look at this. The rooftop chase bathroom fight from the Bourne Ultimatum is the exception that proves the rule. The herky-jerky editing style works, but only because director Paul Greengrass is clearly giving some thought to rhythm, narrative, and emotional beats instead of chopping it up willy-nilly like every filmmaker who has since tried to copy him. I'm not saying every action scene should be shot in long takes like a Bellatar film, But wouldn't it be great if filmmakers could temper their jitterbug cutting with a modicum of governing thought so we could see what's going on? Once again, I wholeheartedly agree with this article. I forgot that article ended with the Bourne example. And I would say that in the Fast and the Furious movies, I've really usually loved the action. There are master shots, and there are lots of things. But as the series has progressed, it's gotten to the point where it's so now untethered. I feel like when the action scenes have lost all of their meaning. They're very mechanical. They don't have ebbs and flows. They start and they stop. And it's a bummer. It is a bummer. So what can we do? I don't know. But as we now live in a world where action scenes are sometimes the raison d'etre of a film and why people go to see them, I think it's only going to get worse, not better, because we're losing our action filmmakers. These action scenes are being created in the computer by visual effects artists. And by doing that, I was having a conversation today and with Mike Bodden, and Mike Bodden pointed out something that I think is absolutely true. I think a lot of action cinema today is being inspired by video game cutscenes or what it's like to play a video game in general. Because with a video game in general, you are in the midst of it. You're the one doing the driving. You're the one doing the fighting. So the action is happening all around you, and that kind of quick cutting or that kind of quick action, I think, is influencing filmmakers. But the thing is, it does not translate. When you are not in the middle, when you're playing, whether you're playing from a first-person or a third-person perspective, it's a very different thing than if you're actually watching drama on a big screen. And I really think there's something to that. I think the rise of games like Call of Duty, or whether it's Uncharted, or there's so many different games, but I'm thinking things like Call of Duty have a lot of vehicle scenes, and I think that's problematic. I think that's what's happening. I think that this kind of action filmmaking, which is being designed by committee, is not working because you forget the human element and you forget the staging of what it means. At the end of the day, it's not just the action. It's how the audience relates to the action because of their own experience living in the real world. You might never have driven a car more than 100 miles an hour in your life, but you understand what it means because you know vaguely how fast that could be. So when you keep cutting back to your protagonists who might be driving, on the opposite way on a freeway, like in To Live and Die in L.A., they're part of the scene because you care about them, and you as the viewer know how hard it would be to be driving on a freeway with oncoming traffic rushing at you at speed. That'd be really horrific, and it's scary, and it's frightening, and that knowledge that you carry with you is what makes an action scene work. The action filmmakers, the best action filmmakers, are able to understand how to manipulate the audience by the way they design their sequences, and they're all character-based. All the great action sequences have characters in them, somehow, that you're always following. I remember seeing the invasion of Omaha Beach from Saving Private Ryan, which, by the way, was like the one of the inspirations for one of the first Call of Duty games when you stormed the beach at Normandy. It was incredible, and Steven Spielberg knew, and Janusz Kaminski knew what they were doing. And even though that is a very hectic, crazy scene, you feel every minute of it, and you're hoping Tom Hanks doesn't die. But lately, I felt that all of these action films have really been letting me down. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And obviously, I was inspired to talk about that because of seeing Fast and Furious 9 and being more than just a little disappointed. This next name, Kenneth O'Neill, is who's on deck. He's not even on deck. He's here. Keith. Did I say Kenneth? Keith O'Neill. Keith O'Neill. Hey, Rob, with all of the news of movie studios getting bought out or merging with other companies, it makes me a bit worried about the future of movie studios and entertainment in general. Does it worry you? Now, don't get me wrong. Movie studios being owned by other companies is nothing new. Paramount was owned by a company called Gulf and Western for a while in the 60s and in the 70s. Viacom has owned Paramount since 1994. Some Robservations viewers might not know this, but Coca-Cola owned Columbia Pictures in the early 80s before Sony bought the studio in 89. Both Seagram's, yes, the Canadian whiskey company, and General Electric at one point owned Universal. What concerns me is that the movie studios won't entirely be in control of their own future. Take Warner Brothers and the HBO Max debacle, for example. That was AT&T's call to have movies released on the streaming service the same day they debuted in theaters, and blindsided everyone in the movies that are on the studio's 2021 slate. Another example is 20th Century Studios being owned by Disney. Granted, 2020 threw a wrench into everyone's plans. 20th Century Studios has now only released 4 movies since Disney officially renamed the studio. That output seems low, especially for a major studio. I just think these conglomerates are becoming too big and have set themselves up as a house of cards that will fall at any moment when one of their expensive subsidiaries fails. Have taken away creative and financial freedom from those studios. Your thoughts? Keith O'Neill. P.S. Here's the article where it says AT&T made the decision about releasing WB's 2021 films on HBO Max. Yeah, I remember that article, but I do think that was Toby Emmerich's doing, who was working at Warner Brothers, because he was trying to save his ass and save his job. So here that is. Good letter, by the way. Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I rail a lot. I think corporate interests and great storytelling are diametrically opposed to one another, at least on spreadsheets. What corporations will never understand, nor will they ever be able to quantify, is what's good storytelling. If you could, you'd go press a button or figure out from a computer to spew out how to do it. But you can't. Part of telling great stories and making movies is alchemy. It's taking something and making it work. I mean, it's magic. And you can't put that on a spreadsheet. You have to trust in the talent. And I watched, there's a channel on YouTube called Film Courage. And I was watching Film Threat's Chris Gore on Film Courage. And I thought he had a lot of really interesting things to say. And he made the point of, like, there used to be like one box to tick that studios had, which was to make it fun. Make it fun for the movie-going audience. Whatever that fun is defined as, make it fun. Now there's like 20 different boxes to tick. You have to do all these things in order to make it worthwhile, because a movie is no longer a movie anymore. A movie is in itself a multinational, corporation. That movie is supposed to derive not just global box office, but if it's a big tentpole IP, it's got to drive everything else, whether it's theme park interests, product interests, selling apparel or action figures or whatever. So one movie becomes an economic engine that drives forward corporate interests. But at the end of the day, what's interesting is that on a spreadsheet, it just says, well, here's the next movie coming out. It doesn't say, here's the next good movie coming out, because it's already been made, so they don't know. They would assume it's good or not. But the studios don't really care. They just care that it makes money. I look at the Kelvin Universe Star Trek movies, and I think those movies actually devalued the Star Trek brand, just like I think Rise of Skywalker devalued the Star Wars brand. I don't mean to take anything away from you, whether you like Rise of Skywalker or not. I think universally we can say it's certainly not a good movie. And if you watch Star Wars and Empire and then you watch Rise of Skywalker, you'll ask yourself, well, what happened here? We've got the best filmmakers in the world. Why should they ever make a bad movie? Well, because the filmmakers aren't being allowed to do their jobs, which is not great. Not great. So, Keith, thank you for writing in. Simon Gilmore writes in. This is a good one. As a friend of Rob's Dave Parker and the Richard, I would like to request to be a guest on Robservations and discuss how movies and music literally saved me and my twin brothers' lives growing up. Our father is dying of lung disease, and yet again, movies and music is keeping us going. I would love to discuss this and how much these forms of entertainment have kept us going and alive. Not a bad idea. Well, listen, Simon, as you might know, I have a new show that I've had on the air, which I just started last night, called Robservations Midnighter. And the specific focus of the Robservations Midnighter is on you. on you imagination connoisseurs. And what it's all about is I'll usually have a topic to start the conversation off. But as it happened last night, I mean, I can't go because I'll be exhausted. I can't go for another 3 hours. The show is going to be 90 minutes to 2 hours. Well, it's going to be 90 minutes to start with, and I figured 2 hours, but I went for 3 hours last night. But it is a show specifically so you imagination connoisseurs can come on the show, and I'll basically grill you and ask you what you're interested in. Tell me about your life and all that. So that is the Robservations Midnighter on Monday through Thursday. So check that out. And it's a show that's starring you. So please look out for that. And it'll be on tonight. Hopefully we'll have a very good time. This one comes from Mad Villainy again. We heard from Mad Villainy for the first time the other day. Hello, Rob and fellow imagination connoisseurs. I need to vent a little bit. So I hope my indecipherable ramblings make for half-decent content. Well, God damn it, they better. Let me preface this by saying that I find politics genuinely fascinating. That is, for about 45 minutes until the conversation inevitably starts to escalate or become repetitive. It's beginning to feel like every conversation I have with friends and colleagues must at some point divulge into talking about the state of our nation. Undoubtedly an important conversation to have, but the overexposure has left me feeling numb to issues I truly care about. Especially in this age of the internet, it seems that everyone with a Twitter account feels they have a duty to impart their timeless wisdom upon you, and I'm burnt out. A wise man once said that every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen, and I've been doing my best, but it's getting harder all the time. However, the last thing I want to do is stop listening. I've spent far too much time in my life trying to convince people that my hopelessly nerdy passions are worthwhile to dismiss other people's out of hand. To be honest, I'm not sure how to end this letter. I don't have a grand takeaway or even a conclusion, really. I'm just tired. Sincerely, the PGS's most exasperated villain. Well, Mad Villainy, I know what you mean. When I say everybody has a story to tell, what's interesting is people aren't telling their stories anymore. They're telling you how to think. Like Tony Montana. You ever been a communist man? They tell you what to think, what to do, like Little Cheap Pat. But I think that's what's happening. I want people to tell me stories about their lives, not stories about what they think or believe about what our political spectrum is. Now, I think talking about politics is fine. I have no problem with that. But if that's all anybody talks about, what about your day, man? You know, everyone always seems so angry and they're going to tell you about this or tell you about that. And I'm like, well, what'd you do today? Have you done anything fun? Did you go see any movies? Or are you just a political activist 24 hours a day? Do you have nothing more to say than that? I mean, it's getting a little tiresome, to be honest. So how do you get around it? I don't know. But I think you're right. I guess we have to just put up with it. But the problem is most people's political viewpoints aren't really worth hearing anyway because most people aren't as well informed as they should be. Even me. But I always get corrected if I say something or somebody writes in and gives me the business if I don't have anything ready or willing, something that makes me do something cool. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying now. I'm babbling because I was up late. I got a few more letters that I have, but I'm going to save them for tomorrow, including a letter from Miss Willow Yang, another Voyager review. But I'm going to hold that till tomorrow. Let's see where we're at. The first person today is Mr. Robert Conrad. Mr. Robert Conrad, it is good to have you on the show, or at least you sent a tip to me, and it's going to be good to read it. Hi, Rob. I am a huge fan of the movie Perks of Being a Wallflower. I love that movie. That same director turned the Broadway musical Dear Evan Hansen into a feature film, and the trailer dropped today. I've seen the play on Broadway, and the trailer looks great. Thoughts? Well, Robert Conrad, I have not seen the trailer yet, but I really like Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I believe the director of the movie also had written the book it was based on. He wrote his own screenplay, which is pretty cool. I think that's very, very excellent. Stub McShave says, hi, Rob. I won't be watching live because I have a very early work day tomorrow. The main series for Star Wars and the Fast and Furious each have 9 installments. They're both nonologies. Nonologies. Which do you think is the best nonology? Star Wars has the highest peaks, but maybe also the lowest lows. They're so different. I mean, obviously the answer I would give would be Star Wars, but when I think about the movies, I mean, like, you know what? I'm going to give the edge to Star Wars. I know box office wise you could make a case, but I'm going to give the edge to Star Wars only because of the amount of imagination that's involved. Star Wars to me has 2 really good movies, an okay movie, and 6 rather disappointing entries for various reasons. The prequel trilogy I've learned to like more than I used to because I look at it as they're bad movies but good Star Wars, and I look at them that way. The Fast and Furious movies have definitely more of a guilty pleasure aspect to it, although the last 6, 7, 8, 9 certainly have a lot of imagination involved to make me not believe, but who knows. Gerard Leon sends in a tip. I think I remember you saying that you haven't been on top of comics for a while, but in the same vein as The Boys and Invincible at Jupiter's Legacy, have you ever read Nemesis, Irredeemable, and Incorruptible? Yes, I have. And I have them all. Han is Mephisto. I like those comics. Basically, they're comics where instead of having superhero protagonists, they're villains. And I think they're all really, really good. And brutal. Nemesis is particularly brutal. Actually, they kind of all are. I really like those comics. And you're right. Those are stuff that I pick up. I bought soft covers. I got soft covers of those. But yeah, I picked those up. Justin Toner sends in a super chat. Hello, Justin. Rest in peace, Charles Grodin. Lost him to bone marrow cancer at 86 years old. I was just watching him in the extended TV cut of the 1976 King Kong on the new Blu-ray. Isn't he the captain of the Petrox Explorer? I just got that Blu-ray too, but I haven't watched it. I haven't seen that movie in forever. Emil Johansson says, the sad part about reality is that if someone killed your dog, you probably could not do what John Wick would have done. I don't know, I might have. If someone took the life of my beautiful pooch Gilbert, I might go John Wick on their ass, and they deserve it. Sheriff Carl. Hello, Sheriff Carl. How are you? I don't think it's any coincidence that the topic of today's show falls on the same day as the 4K release of The Last Action Hero. Can't wait to blast this shit with Atmos, possibly the most metal soundtrack ever. Also, rest in peace to Charles Grodin, and 4 years since we lost Chris Cornell. What a bummer. Has it been 4 years? Yeah, I don't know about Last Action Hero, man. I am not a big fan of the Jack Slater. That film is such a mess to me from a screenwriting standpoint. There's fun stuff in it, though. And there's a lot of cool directing things that John McTiernan did, but it just doesn't hold together for me. I don't think I'll be purchasing that movie. I know, right? I should probably purchase it, but I don't think I'm going to. Ray Valero says Gareth Evans is one of the best at directing action. Ray, you are correct. Correct. Torrin Atkinson asks, who won the IICFF? That would be the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Tune in on the 700th show of Robservations, and you will find out. Latino Slant. Polly from Latino Slant is here and says, R&B, can't wait till mañana, amigo. Please share the love with your community. R&B on the Slant at 7 p.m. PST. Link sent to your Twitter, homie. Well, if you haven't seen Polly on Latino Review, he's one cool cat. You got to come see us. We will be streaming together. Vatos locos forever. Siempre, señor. Yes, tomorrow night, we're going to do it. Latino Slant and I at 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be a great stream. Brandon Sheehy says, Rob, I'm a little unconvinced on your theory that action filmmaking is diminishing. I don't think action filmmaking is diminishing. I think that it's in danger of being overtaken and losing its core tenets. It's easy to make this observation when you analyze poor movies. Fury Road, Edge of Tomorrow, Captain America 2 and 3, and especially the Mission Impossible films have amazing action. Oh, I agree with you. I do. I think they're great. I think those movies are great. I don't necessarily think it's going away, but I think a case in point, the Fast and the Furious franchise is a franchise for me that if you watch the progression of action in the franchise, it's literally gotten to a point where it's all meaningless. I mean, on one hand, part of the raison d'etre of that franchise was car chases and things like that. Now the car chases, yeah, they're proficiently done, but you're like, what's going on? Who's going where? I don't care. I don't think I was indifferent. I was bored. And you've got to make sure that action sequences engage your audience. They are character. After all, action is still conveying character. So, yeah. Jeff, but I think, look, the Mission Impossible movies do a really good job of showing they're beautifully made because Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise understand their master shots, and they don't. There's no trickery involved, and they're shot that way. They have a purpose. They have an intent. And Chris McQuarrie is an auteurist director. He's in there doing his work. I mean, that stuff is designed all together. It's McQuarrie's putting his imprimatur on it, and that's why that stuff turns out so great. Jeff Yerke and Mrs. Yerke send in a tip and says, "Hi, Rob. I want to single out what to me was a great action sequence, namely the stairwell fight. Yes, in Atomic Blonde. Directed by a former stuntman, the 9-minute single shot had grit, excitement, character fatigue, and more. I loved it. Live long and prosper, the Yerk Man." That's exactly what I'm talking about, Mr. Y. That's the kind of stuff that you want. And I agree. I think that had some great stuff in it because you believed it. And again, you're in a location. You're in a stairwell. We've all been in stairwells. Imagine having a massive fight sequence in a stairwell. Flying downstairs. I mean, they had a good stairwell fight in Casino Royale. In Casino Royale, the Bond film. There's a great hallway fight there. We all know what it's like to be in a hallway, or in a stairwell. Man, not a place you want to get trapped. And when you're fighting in there, we know what it's like. It's some craziness. Mexican Iron Man sends in a super chat. You are a generous, generous, generous Iron Man, sir, and I thank you. By the way, do you know? Well, I shouldn't say it until tomorrow, I guess. Speaking of Iron Man, because of the great heel versus babyface, I'm getting another Iron Man. I'm very, very excited. Mexican Iron Man says, "Great show. Most informative show on the subject. Great perspectives from this great Post-Geek Singularity community. Hail great wrenches. Hail PGS and hola ale to RMB. P.S. We are uber excited to host you tomorrow on The Slant." I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. I'm very excited. And Mexican Iron Man, once again, thank you for being so supportive. You are a very supportive cheerleader for many of these YouTube channels, and it is, sir, greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Aurora Uplinks says Rise of Skywalker needed better starship fights. Amen. I will say this: the Battle of Scarif and the end of Rogue One. Now that was a starship. That was a battle, man. I love that shit. That was what I want to see from a Star Wars movie. Why we didn't get that in Rise of Skywalker, I don't care. I don't know. I didn't care about any of it. Did not like. Why did I not like it? Not good. But that Battle of Scarif is fucking dope. The Spanker. The Spanker's here. The Spanker says, if NASA tasked you with picking the mission for the next space probe, what would the mission be? What planets, moons, asteroids would it visit? And what would you name it? The Robert? Laugh out loud. No, I still think the most important, I think, Enceladus or Europa. And I know missions are planned to both, but I think those are places where life can exist in our solar system, because internally there's oceans supposedly on Europa, and Enceladus there's places for life to happen. And I think that would be where I would send probes, would be to Enceladus or Europa. And what would I call it? Now, I couldn't call it the Robert. I'd have to give it some pretentious great name, like Perseverance or Odyssey or Ingenuity. I like that. I don't know, probably, if I was going to name my space mission, what would I name it? It's hard to say. That's I'd have to think about that. I want to name it something with some kind of historical perspective that was easy to remember and cool. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a lot of those good names are already taken up, but we shall see. I don't know. Can I think about that, Spanker? Because I can't. I'd have to do some research. Oh, look who's here. Is here. I have a great letter that it's an interview she sent me about interviewing me about Tango Shalom, which I'm also going to read on tomorrow's show. My Rhino sends in a super chat and says, 2 thoughts for you. 1, Atomic Blonde has the best action scene I've ever seen in this century. And 2, DK Metcalf should be the new Superman. I hope he can act. Is that what somebody said to me yesterday? Was it DK Metcalf? Hang on. I was like, I was the DK Metcalf. Well, he's not an actor, but he certainly looks the part. He could make a good Superman. He's got a great All-American, a big smile, and certainly has the body for it. Look at those arms, man. Man, you know what? Wow. Yeah, he could definitely play the part. I was like, what actor? I wasn't thinking football. I wasn't thinking Seahawks, That's pretty funny. I like that, though. DK Metcalf. I don't know if he can, but I mean, I think there'd be a Brian Bosworth comparison made there. Another Seahawk that went into movies. But I got to tell you, I do love Stone Cold. I love Stone Cold. Yeah, I don't know if he could act though. Ziggy sends in a super chat and says the best modern action movies, John Wick trilogy and Mad Max Fury Road. I love the John Wick trilogy, but I do think all the headshots and gun fu get a little repetitive. To me, the GOAT's Mad Max Fury Road. You're absolutely right. Although I got to give it to you, the Rad or the Raid and the Raid 2 are all pretty good. Pretty great stuff. Barry Reynolds subscribed to this channel. Thanks, Barry Reynolds. I appreciate that. Alexander Wilson is here. Hello, Alexander. I just read an article where the Warner Discovery merger is designed to be a takeover target from the insights from the investors. Also, it looks that Warner Discovery will be the name of the new company. Thoughts? I mean, Warner Discovery works. It's like Warner Discovery. I like that. I was kind of hoping Warner Infinite or Warner Max, but Warner Discovery is nice. I would be okay with that. Warner Discovery, like the studio logo would say Warner Brothers, a Warner Discovery company. I'd like that because I like the idea, the whole idea of discovering something new or discovering something you haven't seen. Warner Discovery sounds. I like that. I think that's good. I didn't know that, Alexander. Thanks for writing in. That makes sense to me. Georgie sent me a very generous super chat. Well, Georgie, thank you. Hi, Rob. Greetings from Vienna, Austria. Ooh, that's what they it went to in the Bond movie Living Daylights when she says Vienna. A part of Fast 9 was shot in my homeland of Georgia. Yes, it was, and my friend Charlie de Lazarica went to Georgia and filmed behind the scenes. And I have to say that when I was working on Hills Run Red in Bulgaria back in 2008, I was talking to a guy that was affiliated with a studio in Georgia. And apparently, I don't know whatever happened. I wanted to find out because it sounded great. And yeah, they did Georgia gets filmed Georgia. Now, this is when you say your homeland of Georgia, I want people to understand not Georgia where Atlanta is. Georgia in the former Soviet Union. In Russia, that Georgia. And I've heard that they've got really a great, vibrant film community there. And the studio, I don't know if it ever got built or whatever, but yeah, and also Film Georgia, meaning not Film Georgia, Atlanta, but Film Georgia, your Georgia, gets a nice logo on the end of the film. So that's I think there's a pretty big section of there's some great action shot there. I think you'll be pleased. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. That's incredibly kind of you. Jared Leon says, Roberto, I remember in a previous episode that you've been wanting to buy the negatives for Free Enterprise and re-edit in 4K size it. Do you have a GoFundMe or something for the like of us in the PGS to donate? Well, here's the thing, Gerard. I need to talk to my executive producer who owns it and find out. I just don't think crowdfunding something like this. I figure the whole thing will cost about $400,000 to buy the negative and do the cleaning. Just to clean the negative and have it transferred to 4K is about $100,000. It's too much I think it's too much to crowdfund. And I couldn't necessarily ask for a crowdfund for something I don't yet own. I mean, the way I would probably do it is if I found a way to buy the rights to the movie. If I could buy the rights to the movie, or I had even though it would cost about, like I said, about $400,000 to do the whole thing. If I own the rights to the film, then I could crowdfund, like if you wanted the Blu-ray or a 4K set, I could use that money and then go do the actual work. But I'd have to buy the film first, I believe. But yeah, but I'd love to do it. I mean, I'd love to do it. If I had it, I could make it worth everyone's while. So. But if you know anyone out there who, if you wanted to invest, come up with that $400,000, you'd be the executive producer of the new movie. The new version of the film would have a new copyright on it and everything. So, yeah. Sheriff Carl says, I need to get a laptop or a computer, but when I do, I totally want to get on Midnight Metal. I'm the fucking metal sheriff, and the party is the law, motherfuckers. Also, I'm well. Thanks for asking. It was raining here today. Raining in Seattle? No way, Sheriff Carl. But Sheriff Carl, know that in addition to Midnight Metal, which happens on Friday and Saturdays, we now have the Robservatory. We have the Robservations Midnighter show that starts at 12 o'clock Monday through Thursday. And it's a very low-key show, but it is a show for you imagination connoisseurs, to come on and be a part of it. I had a great time last night. It was like a late-night radio talk show. All I would ask is that if you want to come on to the Midnighter, to have a decent camera and a decent microphone so we can hear and see you. Rob, why base the future of action filmmaking on a dud movie in a declining series like Fast and the Furious? Is it declining, though? I mean, it makes a lot of money. If anything, the more grounded, real stunt action filmmaking in John Wick and Mission Impossible is more in vogue with modern audiences. Hey, I agree, but the fact is, Fast and the Furious does very, very well overseas, and that's what people are buying off on. And I just want to talk about it because I think that the Fast and the Furious franchise for a while there was really great. Fast 5, I mean, I thought it was every movie that came out was better, and I thought it was really great. I'm not basing but I've seen a lot of movies. There's a lot of movies that are lacking in the action department. Ray Valero says, Gangs of London has great action. I recommend it. Yes, and of course it was created by Gareth Evans, who made The Rad and The Rad 2 Barrendal. Fernando Barrero is here. Hi, Rob. Hope you had a great birthday weekend. I did. One of my favorite movies with Charles Grodin, rest in peace, was Midnight Run. It's in my top 10 films. I also love to repeat watch Seems Like Old Times with Chevy Chase, Goldie Hawn, and Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty. Those are all great movies. I think I forgot. Did I forget to read? Somebody sent in a super chat about that. I think I might have missed it. And let me see if I can find it. Go back here and see. Maybe not. Somebody. Oh, yes. Oh, no, I got that. That was Justin Toner. He was the one that said that about Charles Grodin. So, yes, I forgot. Yes, but you're right. I'm having a problem. My computer's all fluctuating. Why is this happening to me? Where was? Oh, yes. I'm a big Charles Grodin fan. He played Dr. Hill in Rosemary's Baby in 1968. And since then, Midnight Run's probably my favorite movie that he's even in. I love Midnight Run is so good. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, disc reality show, Warner Brothers and Sister Wives. Wow. I don't know if people would watch, but yeah. Wow. Gerard Leon says, Rob, a morally imperative query. Brian Bosworth's John Stone, Joe Huff from Stone Cold, or Charlie Sheen's Sid Daniel Saxon from Beyond the Law as a bigger motorcycle badass. Dude, I got to go with Brian Bosworth and Stone Cold. You got to go with him. I mean, he's much buffer than Charlie Sheen, and that rocking that mullet. Plus, Lance Henriksen, if you guys haven't seen Stone Cold, yeah, it's a B movie. And yeah, it stars Brian Bosworth. But I got to tell you, it rules. And Lance Henriksen, oh my God, he's so good. He is so good. I Fart for Freedom sends in a tip and says, have you seen The Wraith? I have. From the 1980s, a YouTube critic I like by the name of Drum Dums just did an interesting review for the movie. I never knew of it before. Oh, I saw it in the theater because Sherilyn Fenn's in it. It's okay. It's kind of like The Crow, really. Somebody wrote in a couple months back and said it reminded them of The Crow, and I was like, yeah, it kind of has the same thing going on there. So it kind of is kind of like The Crow, to be honest. I think that's absolutely correct. So, indeed. Terrier, our friend Terrier, all the way from Norway, is here. Terrier says, hey, I'd buy Free Enterprise at least as many times as I've bought A New Hope. It's the same thing. Hope. Oh, that's very nice of you, sir. Thank you so much. Hopefully, I'd love to get Free Enterprise out. It's been out of print. You can't buy it. You can get the old Anchor Bay DVD that came out in 2006. So it hasn't been out for a very long time. Well, listen, everyone. I am going to end this episode of Robservations, episode number 690, only because I'm tired and I have to go take a nap before I can go do Robservations Midnighter tonight. And once again, if you want to come on the show, it's really a show about you. It's a show about having people come on, and I know it's late for some people, but if you're on the other side of the planet, you're in England, you're in Australia, you're in Asia, come on down. Even if you're staying up late here in the United States, one and all are welcome. Last night's show went pretty well, so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank everybody for your generous contributions via super chats and tips. That was very nice of you. And if you want to send me letters, please write me at Burnettwork.net. Tomorrow's going to be a long letter day. I got Willow Yang. I got a lot of good letters in my quiver to fire right at you. I'm going to knock those letters and shoot them. So, coming at you. I want to thank my moderating staff for being great, for hanging out for a little bit of a later show. Louise X. Sparrow. First of all, starting with Mike Bodden and, of course, the Richard. Louise X. Sparrow for being here. Thank you, Madame. I don't know who else is here. Oh, wait. I can't see who else is here. Darren Seeley is here. Justin Toner is here. Greg Smith is here. My God, Greg, good to see you. I think I got everybody. Is that everybody? I think it might be. I don't know. Well, if I missed anybody, I apologize. I want to thank you for being the best moderating staff in the whole wide world. And on that note, I will say, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better day. And join us tonight for Robservations Midnighter.